Good morning and welcome to this morning's webinar. So for those of you who have joined us for the first time and don't know who I am, I'm the Partnerships Manager here at My HR Toolkit. Sorry, my name is Marie. I probably should have introduced myself properly this morning. Sorry, it's been a bit of a clicking exercise. So if it is the first time that you have been joining us, we have been running a series of different webinars, probably since the beginning of lockdown. We've just started this year, but more of a webinar series aimed at the SME and the HR professional. So we've been looking at lots of different topics in running engaging webinars, social media, optimizing SEO. And today what we're going to be looking at is how to make your consultancy website come to life. And I'm joined by Cliff Hewson, who's from our marketing department and who also runs his own website digital agency, to give us his tips, tricks and advice on how you can do that. So in terms of the format of the webinar, Cliff will spend approximately 20-25 minutes covering the main part of the content, and then at the end we'll come back and answer any of your questions. Would encourage you to put some questions into the question and answers little tab at the bottom on your toolbar. Just feel free to add them as you go along, and then we can come back to them at the end. If we can also ask if you can try and put the questions into that box just so that we don't lose them in the chat, that would be great. So as I just mentioned, there's obviously also a Zoom chat. Feel free to get involved in any questions that we do ask out. We've also got some polls that are happening throughout the presentation. And a bit more housekeeping, just to clarify that today's session is obviously offering some general advice, tips and best practice. Our next webinar is on the 7th of July, I believe. What I will do is once we've got started is to put a link to the registration for the next one, which is around quick SEO wins for your HR consultancy. So if you didn't join the last one, we will be doing a session on that, and Camille will be joining to host that in a few weeks' time. So here this morning to talk to us about managing your consultancy website is Cliff, and I'll let Cliff introduce himself. So over to you, Cliff, and I'll stop my screen share.
Okay, thanks, Marie, and good morning, everyone. I'm just going to see if I can get my screen shared up. Excellent. So hopefully you can see my slideshow now. So yeah, as Marie said, I'm the marketing manager at My HR Toolkit. Prior to that, my background is that I spent over 10 years running a small digital marketing agency, primarily working on website development and website strategy for small local businesses. So it's from that backdrop primarily that I'm delivering this presentation today. What I want to do, I think, often the problem that small businesses have when they're considering their website is they jump in too quickly to thinking, oh, we need a page for this and a page for that, and we want a logo here and an image there. And what I would always really encourage people to do is take a step back and look at a wider picture before jumping into the detail, and that can really help then to enrich and inform the strategy that you then take with that website. What we're going to do just to kick off is just have there's a quick poll which hopefully will pop up there for you. Just asking the question around what kind of challenges, what do you feel your primary challenges are with regards to your website and your online marketing strategy. So have a little look at that, and if you want to engage with that and fill that in, that'd be great. So as I said, what I want to do is just throw out there in the time that we've got today, 2 or 3 kind of foundational principles that I would always refer to and encourage businesses to consider and engage with when they're thinking about either a new website or enhancing and adding to the website that they might already have. And the first of these, which is really crucial to understand, is the principle of the customer journey. And you may well have come across this before. It's certainly not at all unique to websites. It's very much a principle that applies across the full remit with marketing. But it's really important to understand this process when you're thinking about your website, that well before a potential client customer reaches the point where they're ready to make a decision to engage your services, there's a whole journey that they've gone along before they get to that point where there'll be just a process that's brought them to that point. They don't just suddenly pop up out of the blue ready to buy something. And the three stages of that broadly break down into awareness, consideration, and decision. So the first of these, awareness. Now, this is the stage really where the customer they've become aware of either a problem, a frustration, maybe a challenge that they're needing to address, and they're in that stage of gaining understanding around what is the nature of that challenge, what is the context in which it sits, and they're in an information gathering phase of, okay, here we've got this challenge, we've got this problem, what do we do now? Moving on from that, then is the consideration stage, and this is still very much part of the information gathering process. They've identified, clarified, and pinned down what their particular problem is, and now they're starting to look at, well, what sort of solutions, what sort of options do I have in terms of addressing this particular problem, this challenge? And they'll be researching around, I say, shortlisting down those various different options about how they're going to tackle this particular challenge that they have. And then the final stage of the process is the decision-making stage. And at this point, they've narrowed down and decided on the sort of solution that they might want to take. And in the context that we're talking about today with a consultancy type business around HR, the solution that you're hoping that they've pinned it down to is that they need to engage an HR professional, a consultant, to help them to address and solve the problem or the challenge that they have. So at this point, they've decided what kind of solution that they need, and it's at this point they're now looking to shortlist down, okay, who and how are we going to get this need met? I'm going to have a look at various different suppliers, people who could meet this need for me, and decide from amongst those which one I'm going to go with. The problem that we have with most small business websites is that they tend to very much neglect the first two stages of this journey. Your typical small business website, it says, this is who we are, here's some of the services that we offer, and here's how to get in touch. And there might be a few bits and pieces of extra things, but the general thrust of what they're doing with their website is, here's our services, we'd love to speak to you. Now that's great if the person on that website at that point is ready to make a decision to engage. If they've already decided that they want that particular service that you're offering, you're telling them that you offer it, and they want to get in touch, then that's fine. The problem that you have is that the people that are in that information gathering phase, working through awareness and consideration, that's not actually meeting their need at that point. It's not adding any value to them. It's not helping them. So they will, if they pass through your website, they will move on to potentially your competitors, other sources of information, in order to help them along that journey. And the likelihood is they'll never make their way back to you, and it will be another supplier that they end up selecting at the end of that process. So what we need to really be considering at this point is how can we serve the needs of the customer at each stage through their journey? How can we draw them along that process and actually give them what it is that they need at the point that they are? So what I want to do is just suggest some questions that you might want to be asking yourselves at this point, because what you want to be trying to do is teasing out, okay, what is it these customers actually want and need at this point, and how can we address that and answer and meet those needs and draw them along the journey whilst keeping them engaged with us as they go through that process. So if we go back to the awareness stage, so the sorts of questions you might want to ask at this point is, how does your typical customer describe their problem or challenge? What is it in their language? What's the burning question they're trying to answer? What is the let's say, what kind of language are they using? Because that might actually be different to how you would describe it when you're talking about your services. What are the common misconceptions around that particular topic? Is there something that your typical client tends to misunderstand or get wrong about this particular thing, where you can help them to improve their understanding? And what are the consequences of them not addressing the challenge? And as you start to address these sorts of questions, what you'll find is that what emerges from there is ideas and thoughts around how you might start to produce content, resources, etc., for your website that actually will capture and engage with those questions, those misconceptions. So you're able to give something of value to the prospective customer that's in that awareness phase. The sorts of things you might want to be doing at this point is offering information, articles, maybe downloadable resources. It could be video, it could be webinars. You're not selling at this point. You're very much not saying, come and buy this service from us. It's too early in the process to do that. This is very much about providing information to help that customer along their journey. As we move into the consideration phase, okay, so at this point, the customer's identified what their challenge or their problem is. They've got a good understanding of it. And now they're starting to look at, well, what are the various different options that I have for how I might address this problem? Do I bring in an external consultant? Is there an option where I might somehow sort of go it alone and try and do this myself? Do I employ somebody? There'll be lots of a whole spectrum of different options that they may have in front of them, and this is the point at which they're considering where they go next. So you might consider well, what are those different options that they might be facing? What are the pros and cons of those different options? How do they weigh up against each other? What are the kind of criteria by which a prospective customer might decide amongst those different options? And again, what you're doing by engaging with these kind of questions is stimulating your own thought process to enable you to craft content effectively that is catching people at the point where they are. It's scratching where they're itching. It's meeting their need at that point, and it's drawing them along in a fairly gentle, gradual way towards a conclusion that you would like them to make. And then moving on from there, we then reach the decision phase. So at this point, this is when the customer they've gone through the process of exploring what the nature of their challenge or their problem is. They've identified the type of solution that they want to engage with. And at this point, it's now down to, okay, how am I going to do this? Who's going to meet this need? Where do I source this service from? And the sorts of questions to consider there is what are the criteria? What are the selection criteria for a typical customer of yours in choosing which supplier they might go with? Why is choosing you over your competitors the better option for them? Why are you the right choice? And what additional information might they need in order to reach that buying decision? And the more of that you can address through your website and indeed your wider digital presence, there's also in fact your social media content that might be on other websites around their webinars you put out. You can address some of these things. Consider what kind of objections do your typical customers have once they reach that point of making a decision. What are your points of difference? And these are perhaps the things that we're more familiar with and feel a bit more natural to us when we're putting our website together. But there's what we don't want to do is just have this very bland, here's what we do, get in touch. We want to give more than that, so that we elevate what we're doing with our website above what they're going to get from the majority of the competitors out there, which will be simply, here's who we are, here's what we do, and here's how you can get in contact with us. Another key concept that I would say sort of overlays on top of this is the concept of building trust. And in a similar way as to how a prospective customer follows a journey of working through awareness, consideration, decision, there is also a journey of them gradually becoming more familiar with you as a company, as a provider, with your brand, and a warming up to you as potential option for them to engage with as a supplier. And the process that someone goes along here is to know, like, trust, buy, repeat, refer. And it's fairly self-explanatory, but the idea is basically a prospective customer becomes aware that you exist. And then through engaging and interacting with you in some way, and obviously we're talking primarily about website today, so they'll begin to engage with your content on your website. Might engage with you on social media, and there'll be various touch points and connection points along that journey. And what you're hoping to do, and what you're trying to stimulate through that process, is a sense of them becoming familiar with you and your brand, liking what it is you're saying, what it is you're doing, and building a sense of trust and confidence in you, so that when they reach that point of making a decision, they feel confident that you're a supplier that can meet their needs, and a supplier that they want to work with. The reality is, and research has shown this time and time again, that whilst people might, if you ask them the basis on which they make a buying decision, they will tell you it's lots of practical, logical things. But the reality is there's a significant emotional factor in how and why people make a purchase or engage with a supplier, and an awful lot of it comes down to how they feel about you. So it's an important thing to be looking to stimulate and develop in our communications. And also with this, the process actually carries on beyond. As I was saying, the process carries on even after the point that someone's made a purchase, because what you would hope is that they will continue to make further purchases, or continue to engage you as a supplier, and also ultimately to become a fan and refer, and help you to attract other customers through giving glowing reports about the service that you've offered out to their wider contacts. And we can consider the website actually has a role right across this full spectrum. It doesn't end at the point that somebody just makes a purchase or becomes a customer. Actually, you can continue to utilize your website to build loyalty and referability amongst your customer base. So what's probably you may have kind of clocked at this point, I haven't said anything about design. I haven't said anything about sort of structure or site maps or any of that sort of thing, because as I was saying earlier on, if you jump in too quickly to that side of things, what you potentially do is miss the wider picture of looking at who your customers are, what their needs are at the various points across their journey. And there's a mapping out to be done of that, which then informs how you then determine what your design structure and page structure, etc., of your website is going to be. And by building a bit of a matrix of need and identifying those questions at the different stages, it enables you to come up with much better and richer and more engaging content, which is absolutely the thing that is going to get your customers engaging with you more, staying with you as they go through that process, rather than jumping off and heading somewhere else. So at this point, when we've identified what a lot of these questions are and we've built this picture, what we can then start doing is considering our content. And with the content of our website, so what we want to do is move way beyond, this is who we are, a bit of an intro about us, here's our 5 or 6 different services, contact. And enrich the user experience of someone engaging with our website, with our web content. So I've put out here just a few ideas and suggestions about some of the things that you might want to think about. And what you'll see as you start to think about these is these different types of content naturally will slot into different stages of that buyer's journey, different stages of the process. Certain types of content are really appropriate at the consideration stage. Other types of content are really relevant at the decision stage. So working through this, thinking about blog and news, if you can produce a regular flow of topical articles for your website that address the key questions and needs that that your customers are having at that initial awareness and consideration phase, it's a great way of enabling them to engage with you in where they're at, and you can add you're adding some real value. You're also building that sense of like and trust because you're presenting the fact that you have specific expertise in that area. You have an understanding of the challenges that they're facing. So you're building all that positivity into that process. You're not asking them to buy anything at that point, but you're answering the question that is their pressing question at that point. The other side advantage of that is that in terms of thinking about search engine optimization, trying to get a prime position in Google for something like HR consultancy, HR services is a big challenge. There's an awful lot of websites out there that are all gunning for those same positions, so it's a big task to get yourself there. What you can do as an alternative strategy or an additional strategy to drive traffic into your website in the first place is that by having articles that specifically address some of these key points of need and these key questions that customers are having, you'll find that that's exactly the sort of thing that customers are typing into Google when they're in that information gathering phase. They're not typing in HR services or HR consultancy, they're typing in, how do I manage absence within my business, or how do I manage holidays, what needs to be included in a employment contract, different sorts of things like that. These are the types of questions, and what you'll find is there's far less web pages competing for those terms. So actually you've got a fighting chance of drawing traffic into your website through those articles. They come in not via the homepage, they come into the article first, and then you can draw them into more of what you want to say to them. But you're capturing them at that awareness and consideration phase. FAQs, again, simple lists of what are the key questions that people are asking about a particular topic. Compile a simple resource for them that answers and addresses those. Consider how your website interacts with your social media activity. Is your content shareable to get it out there to a wider audience? Do you have a feed on your website, perhaps of your most recent tweets or whatever platform you might be? Are you pulling those into your website so people can see that they can connect with you there? Think about video, think about events, webinars. There's so many different ideas and types of content that you can tap into here, and you certainly don't have to do all of them, but I'd encourage you to engage with some that you perhaps aren't looking at already. Email newsletters, again, a great way to help keep people engaged with you along the way. If you can encourage people to sign up with you, subscribe, maybe they give you some basic contact information as they download a resource, then that then gives you the opportunity to continue to communicate and build a relationship with that customer whilst they go through their info gathering process. They may have come across an article that they like from you. You can say, well, sign up and we'll give you some more of that, some more free information. We'll add more value to you. And you're building that trust and confidence, as we said before. Think about how-to guides, white papers, which are more of an in-depth research piece about a particular topic that if you get the right topic for the right people, that can be really valuable for them. And then as we then move a little bit closer to the decision-making process, that's when things like testimonials and case studies, profiles of your team members, all this sort of thing all starts to come into play, because you're just adding that bit of confidence. Okay, you've reached the point of deciding what kind of solution you want. You're now looking for a provider. Okay, let's explore who this provider is. Do they look and feel like the kind of company I would like to deal with? Do they look like they have the expertise and the competence to deliver a really good service to me? And the social proof of somebody else saying that you've done a fantastic job through testimonials and reviews is a great way of doing that. People will always trust what somebody else says about you over and above what you say about yourself. And then at the final step of the process, you've got the kind of call to action: get in touch, get a quote, free consultation, let's talk. Make sure that you are at the right point, asking for the close, asking for that connection to be made. Which brings me on to my a final point for this part of the presentation, because I want to keep things relatively short, because I want to make sure there's enough time for questions. I tend to find that people have maybe some quite specific questions that they like to ask in this kind of around this topic, so I want to leave plenty of time for that. But the final point I want to leave you with is about appropriate desired action. So for every single piece of content you have on your website, every single page, always be asking the question, what next? What is the action, response, takeaway that you want that the person who's viewing that web page to do once they've engaged with the content? Avoid as much as you possibly can do having any dead ends around your website. So if someone reaches the end of an article, send them to another one. If someone reaches the end of a piece of content about a particular topic you might also be interested in, why not sign up to our email newsletter? Hey, follow us on social media. If you liked this, download that. If you're interested in this service, get in touch. Always be thinking, what is the next step that you want people to take? Because just consider, we're always looking at drawing people along a process and a journey. So where do we want them to go next? What's the next step for them? And make sure you interweave that with every piece of content that you produce. So just to recap, as I said, you might have expected me to be talking about things like different website platforms or design approaches or different things like that. But I genuinely feel that these topics are absolutely vital and are the real core to ultimately determining whether a website is going to be successful or not. And by the more of a rich picture you can build around these topics, the better the resultant website you will have at the other end. And also, by the time you've done that, the process then of slotting in what kind of content are we going to have, how are we going to structure it, what's the messaging, becomes actually really easy because you've been through this process beforehand. So I'm going to hand back to Marie now. I'm hoping that there may have been some good questions dropped into the Q&A, and we'll see where we go.
We haven't as yet, but
Okay.
I don't know whether people were probably listening intently to your presentation. Does anyone have any questions that they want to pop into the Q&A box to ask Cliff about? Could be about your website, could be in general, or things to look out for. Let's just give that a couple of minutes. Perhaps whilst we're waiting for that, Cliff, I don't know whether you've got any examples. Perhaps it's kind of like just giving people a bit of context, like of some websites out there that in this space that are quite helpful, or that they're doing the right type of things. Oh God, sorry, my dog's just jumped down. I was just gonna.
So I mean, I could talk about in terms of my HR toolkit. We have a website that presents, as you would expect, all the various different features of of our software platform, and as you would expect there to be, and that does form the core of our website. But what you'll see if you look a bit broader is we have a blog with multiple articles going through to that blog every month, and those articles are specifically geared to address things like key questions that people have around HR management, the challenges they may be facing, sometimes topical. We've had a lot of content that's gone out over the last 18 months or so relating specifically to challenges around COVID and lockdown and furlough. And those articles are really a mainstay of our website in terms of generating traffic into the website. We get an awful lot of traffic that comes into the website because they've identified a topic that they want to explore, and we've answered and addressed and provided resource around that topic through our website. So therefore, someone new becomes aware of My HR Toolkit. That's great for us. And then from those articles, we'll be hoping to encourage them onto our emailing list, directing them through to the relevant part of our software that ties in with the topic they've been looking at, and hopefully encourage them ultimately to become a customer. So that's one example. And in a similar way, webinars like this, it's a similar thing. It's gathering people in who may well be at that quite early stage of considering, either as a direct customer, whether they might want HR software or not, or as a prospective partner of ours, whether they might be interested in adding My HR Toolkit to the suite of services that they offer to their customers. They might be quite a way off making a decision on something like that, but what can we offer to those people to engage with them and start to build some relationship and some trust and confidence, which hopefully will mean that we're opening up more of a conversation around where we ultimately would hope they get to.
Cool, great, thank you, Cliff. So we haven't had any questions through, but I think if obviously anything crops up once you've left the webinar and gone, oh, actually, you know what, I really wish that I'd asked that question, feel free to get in contact with us and we can pop that through. Obviously, as always, we will be sending the recording out. You might get two, given the slight, I'll let Camille work that out as to how we piece them together. But if there's no other questions, just a reminder that we've got our next webinar, as I said, on the 7th of July, where we're covering quick SEO wins. So please do feel free to join us for that. But if not, we will leave that one. We'll leave that one there. Thank you again, Cliff, for your time, and hope that everyone has a good day.